Elizabeth, and he plants her heart into the body of the sacrifice, but Shadow intervenes, and he attacks Crimson, and we see that the heart has fallen out of the sacrifice. The story continues, and Shadow notices the dead Crimson and the sacrifice, and he thinks that none of them seem like the last boss. He thinks that this is where the last boss was supposed to be, and he wonders if this is one of those events which focuses on group battles instead of a final boss fight. He thinks that he is going to check the underground just in case, and if there is nothing there then he can just pick up the rest of the gold coins, and head home, and he leaves. We then see that the heart of Elizabeth is starting to bloom, and the scene cuts to Marie and Claire arriving at the top of Crimson Tower. They each look for Elizabeth and Sid respectively, and Marie wonders what happened here. Claire is then stabbed by the blooming heart, and we see that from inside the heart emerges Elizabeth, who is in a frenzy due to the blood moon. Elizabeth then bites Claire, and the members of Shadow Garden present in the tower comes there, and they free Claire from Elizabeth's clutches, and also decapitate Elizabeth. Number 664 then notices that Claire is alive, but emergency first aid won't be enough to save her. Beta thinks that they won't be able to make a hasty retreat right now, as their lord still hasn't revealed himself, and this must mean that he has something more important to tend to first. She thinks that this must mean that he has trusted her to handle this situation, and she thinks that she can't allow Lord Shadow's sister to die. Beta then asks 664 to continue to take care of Claire, and she asks 665 and Rose to cover her. Shadow Garden then fights Elizabeth, but Elizabeth manages to stop Rose and number 665. Meanwhile Beta cuts off Elizabeth's hand, and she blasts her off with magic. Marie thinks that this is not enough to take out her queen, and she mentions that her queen has always been a slow riser due to low blood pressure. Elizabeth then heals herself, and she releases her true magical energy, and Beta thinks that it's even greater than Alpha's. Seeing this magical energy, Yukime thinks that she will have to take her leave, and Juggernaut then comes there. He hits Elizabeth, and Elizabeth slams him into the wall. She then attacks everyone by controlling drops of blood, and Shadow Garden tries to protect Claire. The attacks leaves Juggernaut heavily wounded, and Yukime thinks that he will be totally useless now, and she wonders how the others are. We see that numbers 664 and 665 are heavily injured, and Beta and Rose are also slightly injured, but Elizabeth shows no sign of fatigue. Beta realizes that Elizabeth is increasing her power by taking their blood, and she asks Rose to take Claire and get out of here. She states that Rose still has things that she needs to do, so she must keep herself alive. Beta then tries to attack Elizabeth, but Elizabeth somehow takes control of the possessed blood in the members of Shadow Garden, and they begin to transform, and Beta can't believe that Elizabeth can interfere with the blessing that Lord Shadow gave them. This also makes Claire transform into a pile of goop, and the scene then cuts to Claire waking up in her mindscape. She meets Aurora there, and Aurora tells her that the possession that Claire has been so worried about was cured long ago. Claire can't believe this, and she wonders who cured it. Aurora states that it was someone that Claire knows really well, and Claire wonders what she is talking about. Aurora then states that Claire was adapting to her powers, but she lost control, and very soon her body will turn into a rotting mess. Aurora states that she is going to give Claire a little help, and Claire has no idea what Aurora is talking about. Claire then asks Aurora where she is, and who she is talking to right now, and who is the person that cured her. Aurora thinks that this is a lot of questions, and she tries to explain everything to Claire. She mentions that Claire's blood has divided into two different types, and it is a result of adaptation. She mentions that the bloodline split into two, the possessed and the progenitor vampire, and the characteristics of both of them are clearly differentiated. Right now these two types of blood are trying to adapt inside of Claire, and she unfortunately has the right constitution for it, but she doesn't know how to control it. This is why the blood has gone berserk in her body, and Aurora then notices that her time is over. A strange mark then appears on Claire's hand, and Aurora states that this will teach her how to control her powers. Claire asks her to explain this a little more, and Aurora mentions that they don't have any time left as things are getting out of hand outside. Claire then asks Aurora who she is, and why she is helping her. Aurora introduces herself, and she mentions that she is helping Claire because Claire belongs to Shadow. Back in reality, Claire transforms into Aurora, and Aurora thinks that this is her first taste of freedom in about a month. Beta then asks Aurora what happened to Claire, and Aurora states that she is just altering her appearance just like Shadow does to himself. Elizabeth then attacks Aurora with the droplets of her blood, and Aurora stops the blood in midair, and she mentions that it's not a big deal to gain control of the blood that is outside of the body. She then attacks Elizabeth with the same blood, and the both of them then fight using blood. Seeing this, Juggernaut thinks that this fight is quite over the top, and Yukime agrees with him. Aurora then mentions that she will show Elizabeth the most almighty power in the world as a bonus, and she tries to use Shadow's atomic attack. Beta thinks that it can't be, and Aurora fails to use the attack, as her current body can't handle such power. Elizabeth then heals herself completely, and Aurora states that her work here is done, and she mentions that she was just buying time until he arrived. Shadow then comes there, and he mentions that the hour of awakening has arrived. Elizabeth tries to attack Shadow with blood attacks, but Shadow counters them using his slime suit. Marie can't believe that Shadow is holding his own against Queen Elizabeth, and she can't believe that he is even more powerful than the Witch of Calamity. Beta wonders why Shadow is taking his time entertaining himself with an exchange of blows, and she thinks that he is already within an easy striking range. She thinks that Lord Shadow can take out Elizabeth in a single strike, and Shadow then protects the members of Shadow Garden from Elizabeth's stray attacks. Seeing this, Beta wonders if Shadow is shielding them from the onslaught, knowing that right now they are helpless. Shadow then states that he can't afford to lose a single one, no matter the weight of the load, and this confirms Beta's belief that Shadow is protecting them from Elizabeth's attacks. Shadow then states that he can't afford to lose a single one, and Beta can't believe that Shadow cares for her so deeply. We then realize that Shadow is not talking about Beta, he is talking about the gold coins, but Beta carries on with her delusions. Shadow then thinks that he can't afford to lose any more of it, and he faces Elizabeth in close quarters combat. The two of them have a spectacular fight with their weapons, and numbers 664 and 665 are in awe of their lord's power. Juggernaut wonders how Shadow is flying through the sky, and Yukime thinks that he is quite a surprising individual. Shadow and Elizabeth are still crossing swords with each other, and Shadow states that this game has gone on for too long. Elizabeth then asks Shadow his name, and Shadow goes for his atomic attack. Marie asks him to not go through with it, but Shadow doesn't listen to her, and he uses an attack named Recovery Atomic, which recovers everyone who turned into a ghoul or showed signs of possession, and it also heals people's injuries. The attack also nullifies the Red Moon, and Beta thinks that Ada is going to have a field day with all the information she got here, and Shadow Garden then takes their leave. Marie also reunites with Queen Elizabeth, and later Juggernaut thinks that it could be fun to pick a fight with Shadow Garden. We then see Sid's friends, Goldie, and Quentin in the train station, and they are all sighing as they weren't able to accomplish the objectives they had for coming here. Claire then says goodbye to Marie, and Sid thinks that ghouls, vampires, and the possessed are just different names for a magic overload, and curing it is easy, but there are afflictions out there which can't be cured. We then see that Sid saw her sister talking to herself that she has special powers, and she wondered if her blood destiny is trying to lead her somewhere. While in the train returning to home, Sid thinks that her sister has a bad case of delusions of grandiose, but he can't dismiss her pain because all children have walked this path at some point. He thinks that brushing it off as a child's concerns is what drives them to delinquency, and Claire then states that there is something that she needs to tell Sid. She mentions that there are some special powers that have taken root in her left hand, and she has to solve the mystery of these powers. Sid mentions that he knows that Claire is going to be fine, and he states that no matter what path she follows, he will always be behind her. Sid still thinks that her sister is delusional, and the train leaves the station. Claire then asks Sid if he knows about Shadow, and Sid states that he is the guy who burned down their school, and he wonders if Claire is curious about him, and Claire tells him to never mind. Sid then thinks that her sister has all kinds of trials and tribulations ahead of her, and she will have to confront her anxiety, pain and reality, but there is nothing he can do about it as her hand has started tingling. He thinks that they have been through a lot, but this event is finally over. He did have some setbacks, and he only managed to recover 500 gold coins, but this is still a lot. After all, the lawless city will always be here, and there are still 2 towers standing. He thinks that he can just come back if he is ever in a financial crisis, because the lawless city is his piggy bank. The scene then cuts to Shadow meeting Yukime in a train, and he asks her what she wanted to talk to him about. Thanks for watching parts 1 to 3, the rest of the parts will be on my channel. Please like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to keep getting new anime recap updates.